To southern Alberta now, where residents are picking up the pieces following the catastrophic flood that hammered the area over the past few days.
More than 100,000 people have been evacuated, as Paula Newton just reported. One of them joins us on the phone.
It is completely flooded. Water is flowing like a river down the main street.
As for the town of Canmore, they are under a state of emergency.
We were at a restaurant and somebody showed me a YouTube video about Elbow Falls and that it was actually frightening. And I was thinking, wait a minute, that's not too far from here.
It was really phenomenal just to see how this city was completely shut down in a few days.
It was a bit weird because we didn't know when we'd be allowed back. We didn't know if our house would be flooded or what. So it, yeah, very memorable. This year in grade 7, we were trying to come up with ideas that would be relevant for the students, you know, ideas that would get them excited, that had meaning to them. So after some brainstorming, we decided to use the context of the Calgary Flood of 2013 to connect with the humanities curriculum as well as the science curriculum of structures and forces and give the students a project to work on that involved a cross-curricular learning experience based around the Calgary Flood.
We started thinking about what can we do to remember the flood in a way that honors it and at the same time provides hope for the future, because part of our driving question was, how does one restore that which seems ruined beyond repair? We set up the entire learning space to be a place of exploration, so we had centers for different types of focuses on what we were learning.
What solution can you find?
Discovering, videotapes about the different types of flood damage and images, people stories, the Tsuut'ina Nation, the people in Inglewood, the people at the Stampede. We were looking at all the different types of people who were affected.
And then on the science side, we were looking at the different units that we cover in grade 7, and one of the units, structures and forces, it was a natural fit because we could review examples from structures all around Calgary. So I used bridges from Calgary, buildings from Calgary, structures that the kids would know about, and use those as examples in our lessons.
Marked another milestone in the flood recovery in Alberta. The Calgary Zoo, badly damaged by all that.
The project itself was based around the zoo, a place where most of the kids have been. They love animals. The zoo had been ravaged by the flood. It was millions of dollars of damage. It was closed at the time, and they were designing flood prevention structures for the zoo. They had a chance to come up with their own solution to an actual problem that had already happened, to a real place they had all been and they all cared about. And that's where the ownership came in, because they were proud of their ideas because they had come from themselves.
In humanities, we were looking at poetic devices, letter writing skills, presentation skills. And then we started thinking about, well, a lot of these people have stories to share and maybe some of the kids have been affected, and perhaps this would be a great way to do some reflective writing, to incorporate poetry into the mix, and for them to take on the voice of someone who has experienced the flood or a creature that was affected by the flood. And because of that, and they'd never thought about writing a poem from that kind of perspective, it broke them out of the mold of, I'm just going to write a poem because I have to write a poem. And every single student wrote amazing poems. I mean, kids who didn't think they could write poetry. We had people crying reading the poetry when they were here, and I was one of them. So fabulous.
I watched the water as it rushed past me.
Heartless, merciless. My hope collapsed.
Like a bridge buckling
under the weight of the water.
Suddenly,
hope illuminates the dark water.
Heroes are born from compassion and empathy.
Heroes who put others before themselves. Heroes who stand in the wake of destruction.
Hope rises.
Hope rises.
The concept itself, the topic, the flood, was chosen because it would be meaningful to every student. Everybody knew about the flood. Everybody had some sort of experience with the flood, whether it was personal. Some of the students had flooded basements and told us those stories. And so their work on the project and on the assignments was self-motivated because they really cared about the issue.
Though the teacher has a power from the authority standpoint, the real power rests in the student's brain. If you can wrap the information you want them to learn in what is already meaningful to them, the brain will select it in anywhere from 100 to 200% faster because it has meaning to them. What happens when it has meaning to them? We know that it already has existing structures in their brain that new information can attach to.
When the student realized that they were building and creating something, they got intrinsically involved. They wanted to build things. They wanted to create something that was meaningful.
We had a 90-minute class period in which to work with, and a lot of the time we took that 90-minute period and broke it into 3 30-minute periods, where the students went to 3 different stations. So they were literally changing seats, moving rooms, having 3 different teachers within the same 90 minutes.
So what is habituation from a scientific perspective? The stopping of neurons from firing. That's what boredom is. If an environmental stimulus goes on for too long and it's not novel enough or meaningful enough, the brain immediately stops firing.
I think the whole point about habituation and getting rid of that is always changing pace, putting something in front of the students that's different, that they haven't seen before in a classroom setting.
The final phase, phase 5, was our gala, and it was basically divided into a hall of vision where the kids could show their structures and what they had created, and then a hall of hope, which would involve poetry and the monuments that they had created in remembrance. We decided on a format where parents and other people in the community would be invited, including the leader of the zoo, to come and visit us, and then we actually had students meeting groups of parents and becoming like tour guides to show them what our exhibits were, and it became something where kids were actually articulating their learning, and it showed that they had owned it. They had actually owned it.
Building or bridge or flood prevention structure. We had a space where we had their poems up, and I remember the parents walking around and the students how proud they were of their poems. The parents were so amazed that their own children had created this, and I could see in each student a sense of ownership, the sense that I made this. It was my poem, it was my voice.
Because we were actually inviting people that were important in their world to come and partake in our gala, they had a goal. We were actually representing the pain, the loss, the experiences that people had in the flood, and they wanted to do that in a respectful, in an honoring way to the people who had gone through this and who had experienced this. And so all of a sudden this elevated some of their motivation, their intrinsic motivation I'm proud of what I want to do, and I want my project to make a difference.